Am I the asshole for not telling a man that the research he was mansplaining to me was my own? Maybe. Let's see where this goes. Let's skip to the point. Yesterday, I went to a bar with a couple of friends who introduced me to one of their friends who works in the same field as I was pretty excited to meet him because it's rare to meet people who work in the same field as I do. He doesn't do exactly the same thing as I do. He's not a lawyer, but a legal advisor. But we do work on the same topics, so naturally we started talking about our work. At one point, we were discussing a point on which we had differing opinions, so I explained mine to him and he replied by saying that my opinion was based on nothing, while his was based on the work of a professional, you guessed it, me. He basically started explaining my work to me, but in a completely wrong way and missed all of my points. I asked him if he was sure that was what the author meant, and he said that he was because it was pretty simple actually. For another good 20 minutes, he explained all of this to me in details like I was a first-year law student. I didn't say anything because it was funny to me to watch him say things that were completely wrong with so much confidence. After that, the topic changed and the night went on. But at the end of the night... Oh wait, so she didn't embarrass him in front of everyone? Oh, definitely not the asshole, but... Let's move on. After that, the topic changed and the night went on, but at the end of the night, right before leaving, I decided to tell him that I was actually the person that wrote the work he had quoted, and that he hadn't really understood it. He reacted very badly, and got very angry. He told me that I had manipulated him just to humiliate him. He yelled at me for not saying it was my work at the beginning. I simply replied that he had embarrassed himself, and left. I woke up this morning to text from my friends saying I was wrong for causing drama and tension, and that I could have been nicer to their friend. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here. I mean, yes, I could have told him right away, but is it that big of a deal that I didn't? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, it's definitely a big deal. You totally should have told him in front of everyone. Am I the asshole for making a seat swapper cry? So I board the plane, settle into my economy plus seat, and a woman approaches me and asks me to change seats to 32B so that her 9-year-old son can sit with her. I ask her how much cash she has to repay me for the money I spent on the seat. That's awesome. This guy wins. I ask her how much cash she has to repay me for the money I spent on the seat. She says I'm cruel for leaving her son with anxiety sitting alone. I asked if she offered the person sitting next to her son the seat in Economy Plus. She said she needed the leg room. I said clearly she cares more about her own comfort than her son's well-being. If she cared, she would have given up her seat and moved to the back. She breaks out in a screaming well-filled, "How could you?" 10 minutes later, a smiling man sits down next to me grinning about his sweet upgrade. My partner says I'm the asshole for questioning her parenting in public and making her cry. Am I? Am I the asshole for telling my mom she was an unwanted guest? My wife has had a stressful time at work and was looking forward to a vacation at her grandparents' cabin. She brought a few books she wanted to read and I brought my fishing rod. That sounds like an innuendo. She had no plans to entertain. My dad stopped by to go fishing. It was supposed to be just my dad stopping by for the day, but somehow my mom inserted herself and I was shocked to see her. My wife had no plans to entertain her. That's how the last paragraph started. My wife had no plans to entertain her. I told my mom that. My mom brought stuff for lunch and dinner and tried to engage my wife into making dinner for us all, and my wife said no. She's relaxing and reading. If my mom wanted to cook, that was my mom's prerogative. My dad and I get back late at the table and my mom started to complain how she did all this herself. I looked at my wife who just took her plate and ate in her room. My mom started to complain to me about it and I told my mom she technically wasn't invited and my wife had no expectations to entertain her in my wife's cabin while my wife was on vacation. My mom started saying, well, she wouldn't have come if she knew that. I told my mom next time, take the hint. Oh, ouch. I told my mom next time, take the hint. If you're uninvited, don't come. I mean, that is fair advice though. My parents left after dinner. My mom complained that my wife should have tried to be a gracious hostess, and I said maybe my mom should try not being an unwanted guest. Split the difference? I mean, not wrong, but not right? I don't know. Am I the asshole for offering to sell my seat to honeymooners? Wait, didn't we just do one of these selling seats? I was flying from Melbourne to Dubai. I paid for a premium economy seat because it's a 14-hour flight and I wanted to be comfortable. The person in the next seat had been upgraded and they asked if I could switch seat with their wives as they had just gotten married and were on their honeymoon. I congratulated him on his nuptials and asked where his wife was sitting. He pointed towards the back of the plane in economy, which raises the question, why didn't they just buy seats next to each other? But I declined to switch seats. He asked if there was any way he could convince me. I offered to switch if he paid the difference between the seats. It's a goodly amount. I had been lucky to get mine at a decent price. It would only have cost him $1,000 in Australian. He said that they were on a budget for his honeymoon. I congratulated once again and put in my earbuds. He muttered that I was an asshole. I said he was a prick for taking the upgrade instead of either sitting with his wife or giving it to her. I told my wife about the incident, and she thinks I should have done the nice thing. For the record, she hates flying in economy, so I knew she would not have switched. Am I the asshole for declining to fix the errors I made in a blanket I crocheted for someone and taking it back instead? By it, I mean she takes the blanket back? Let's find out. I made a blanket for my sister-in-law Amanda. I was able to give it to her last weekend. She'd asked for it in certain colors. I didn't have any other projects to do on my list, so I was happy to make it for her. I had most of the colors already too, so it worked out. When I gave it to her, she was excited and she started to look it over. I figured it was to see how it was put together since she doesn't crochet. After a bit, she said that she loved the blanket, but... here we go. She couldn't help but notice some of the little mistakes I'd made along the way. I asked her what she meant, and she pointed out some things like I'd accidentally done one row of striping instead of 3 for one section. I'd switched to the wrong color and threw off a pattern at some point, etc., etc. Okay, so it sounds like she did actually make errors. She handed it back to me and told me that she loves my progress with it and couldn't wait to see the finished product. I told her that it was finished. She looked down at it and said it wasn't done until it was perfect, and I'd made several mistakes that I could easily go back and correct. Okay, this lady Amanda doesn't sound wrong so far. I was honestly dumbfounded by this. I hate the way perfectionists try to force their quirk onto others. In this case, it sounds like that quirk was just attention to detail. I made this blanket for her for free out of my own free time because I love her. I told her that. She said she knows and she loves me for it, but she wouldn't be able to use it because she wouldn't be able to focus on anything but the mistakes. I said whatever and took the blanket back and said that if she doesn't want it, I'll keep it. She looked surprised and said that she does want it. She just wants my best work and not something I half-assed. I told her that if she thinks me crocheting a whole blanket and making minimal errors is half-assing it, I'd rather just keep the blanket. So she is upset with me and told me I was acting ridiculous and that it wouldn't take me long to fix it. If you know anything about crochet, you know that if I made an error on a row 36 of a 1,115 row blanket, that's essentially starting over again. Anyway, I come to you all. Am I the asshole? This one sounds like another case of women just being women and not being able to get along. Am I the asshole for naming my son the name I had always planned even after my brother and sister-in-law stole the name? My brother and his wife has as much right to name their child whatever they want. I do not own my name. I have no right to dictate what my brother wants to name his kid. With that in mind, my husband's had a traditional family name that I love. Basically, since he and I were dating and started discussing our future, we agreed that we would name our son that name. Oisin. I think I pronounced that right. My husband is Irish. Not in the Boston, my great-great-great-great-grandfather came over in the 1800s kind of way, in the born in Galway kind of way. Neither my family or my sister-in-law have any connection to Ireland. She got pregnant right around when I did, and her son was born 2 months before ours. They named my nephew Oisin Miguel. I did not get upset or anything. When my son was born, we named him Oisin Daniel, like I had told her we'd be doing. She is flipped out that 2 cousins will now have the same name, because 2 people having the same name is just impossible. She is nuts because our family is Hispanic and half our cousins are named Carlos or Camelia. Hey, my uncle's name was Carlos. She is trying to insist we call him by his middle name or change his name. I told her to piss off. My mom is staying neutral, but she was very surprised that my brother gave his son an Irish name. He knew I was planning on using. She expected him to name him after our late father. Anyway, my husband's family thinks the whole thing is hilarious, and I'm inclined to agree with him. My family thinks my sister-in-law is a weirdo, and she thinks I'm an asshole for copying her. Whatever. I'm posting here and sending her the link so she can see outside opinions. Outside opinion? You're both crazy.